Good afternoon, everybody. I'm ready to get into a new book called Second Chronicles, chapter 1. Second Chronicles, chapter 1. We did 29 verses, 29 chapters in First Chronicles, and we completed that. And we are starting in Second Chronicles, chapter 1. And I learned that when they did King James Bible, they divided it into chapter 1 and chapter 2. But it is a continuation of what happened in chapter 1. And Father, we thank you right now for your word. Thank you for being our teacher. Thank you for being a God who knows exactly what to do with us. Thank you for forgiving me, Lord, even when I feel, however I feel, just kind of all over the place today. And thank you for forgiving me and setting me back on the path I ought to be on. And Father, help me to remember to listen to you first. And then everything else has to be silent. Thank you for being a good teacher, the only wise God. And because I call you good, it's not because I lack a better word. That's just who you are. And thank you for every life that will listen today, that we will catch the understanding that we must be educated according to your word so that life can be simpler and we would definitely make better decisions. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. So I'm in Second Chronicles, and this is where yesterday we got the summary of David. David died at a good age. David completed his assignment from God, and now his son Solomon is taking his place, and now he is reigning as king. David, all of the details about David was written by Samuel, was written by Nathan, the prophet, and was written by Gad, the seer. So if you want to know all the details of David, then you have to start back in the book of Samuel and then follow David throughout. And you'll see that this was a king that God said is connected to the promise, who is Jesus Christ. Now David is dead. Now Solomon is in charge. And watch how Solomon started leading. One thing that David did before he died, he prayed for Solomon. That leads me to say, no matter what I do, I must pray and just do what David did and watch God give the results of my prayer. David knew that Solomon was young. He knew that he was inexperienced, but he knew that he was the one that God said, I want to sit on the throne after you. So let's see what happened when Solomon took over while now David is dead. First verse. Second Chronicles chapter 1. Solomon, son of David, strengthened his hold on his kingdom. Solomon came in, he might have been young, he might have been inexperienced, but he was called of God. And when he got in there, the first thing he did was he strengthened his hold on his kingdom. He established that I didn't come to play. He dealt with everybody that he had to set in order, that his dad had told me. He said, keep your eyes on him. Keep your eyes on her. Just keep your eyes on these folk. And don't let them go down to that grave. If you got to deal with them, deal with them. And Solomon did exactly what David did. He gave them an opportunity to change, and they wouldn't change. And just like a good leader would go into a building, if you're not going to do your job, I got to let you go. I will fire you in a minute. That's what a good leader does when he knows that you have a reputation of not following instructions. And then once you set that tone, then everybody else going to watch you because they know your expectations. Solomon went in there, and I'll talk about one guy, Shimei. Shimei was a man that gave David a hard time. When David was running for his life from his son Absalom, Shimei was cussing David out, saying all kind of things and telling him that he didn't have the right to be king because Saul was supposed to be king, and he was using words And David shut his mouth up, and they told David, "Say, you want me to go there and check and go over there and get rid of Shimei?" And David said, "No." He said, "If I learn how to hold my peace, then in other words, maybe this God allow me to be tested by him. And my job is to be quiet. And perhaps if I be quiet, God will bring us out of this thing." And God did bring them out. And then Shimei saw David come back, and he was still king. He was king. He did not lose his life because of Absalom's raised up an army against his own daddy. Absalom was David's son. So Shimei ran his mouth while Absalom seemed like he was in charge. And then when Absalom died and David remained king as God said initially, and went back to Jerusalem, and when he came back to take back what was already his, he saw Shimei. Shimei started talking, telling him, "Forgive me, David. Forgive me, I know I was wrong." So Shimei met David on the road before he got back to the position as being king, and begged for David not to treat him according to the way he had treated him. And David said, "You know what? All right, just go on and do your job. Just go on." So when David got ready to die, he told Solomon, he said, "You keep your eyes on, there's a couple guys I want you to keep your eyes on, Shimei being one of them." He said, "Don't let him go down because he's an old man getting by with that stuff he did while he was around me. He cannot be trusted, but at the same time, just keep your eyes on him. Don't do nothing. But if you ever have to get him, don't hold back." So Solomon called Shimei out to the office, and he called him and said, "Shimei, let me talk to you." He said, "This land that you own," he said, "I'm going to need for you to stay here." He said, "But I'm going to make it clear to you. This is Solomon, David's son, his young son." He said, "You come on in here and you stay here, and don't you ever walk out of this yard or this area." Might have been bigger than the yard. He said, "The day you do, I'm going to kill you." And the reason why Solomon did that, because Shimei had demonstrated, having been up under David, that he could not be trusted. But he begged for his life, and David granted it to him because he was, you running your mouth when I'm down. And then when I get up, you falling all down trying to be on my good side. David said, "Son, just keep your eyes on him." So Shimei was doing pretty good. Year 1, year 2, about 3 years, I believe it was 3 years. Shimei had some servants, which let me know that he still had some power. And 2 of them guys got out of that area that Solomon said, "Be still, don't go out there." And Shimei thought, "I'm going out here to go get my servants. I'm going to pack do what I got to do, get on my donkey, and I'm going to ride on down and go get them. They shouldn't have left me." Shimei had a good reason to leave. And he left. And he went back and captured those guys that had walked away from him. But somebody did this. Hey, Solomon, Shimei left the house. Yep. Okay, bye. Somebody always watching. So Solomon came up to Shimei and said, "Didn't I tell you that the day that you leave this yard or this area that I told you are confined to, that I'm going to kill you?" All I know is we heard no more from Shimei. It was no begging for my life. And what can we learn from that? Oh, God, help me to learn from that. What I can learn from just that first part of that first verse is that Solomon, son of David, strengthened his hold on his kingdom. Don't keep on taking shots at things that you know God don't want you to. You already know God been dealing with you about. And I'm talking to myself. can't keep on taking shots like that. You can't walk in the word and then see a shortcut outside of God's word, and you know God is a girl. You've been walking with me too close. Now watch your steps. Ooh, Lord help me. Because it didn't seem like it was much that when Moses struck that rock, it seems like that should have been a big deal. But it was the last thing that Moses did that God said, I'm finna take you up out of here. It might not have been a big deal when that guy tried to help that Ark of the Covenant. But that's the last thing he did. Seemed like small things. Didn't do nothing big. All you got to do is qualify to be disobedient. And you know God been dealing with you about this certain thing. And Lord help me. I pray right now, Lord. Oh God, please help me not to play around with things that you told me to let go. When you don't have a full understanding of what God is saying, don't try to have a conversation about it as if you do. You may not understand what God is doing, but if he been dealing, I know he been dealing with me like he said, stop drawing a conclusion before the matter is done. Don't talk about that. You don't have nothing to talk about, just be quiet. Miss Brund. So I just had to take that to the altar and say, Lord, because yesterday, it seemed like I could justify a reason to cry and complain. And God is saying, based on what? You've been in my word every day. You gonna follow me? You gonna keep going with me? Or you gonna stop right here? Anyway, that's how Solomon got in there. And if you're gonna start, and not that you be mean, but you have to mean business. Solomon came in and like Paul said to Timothy, he said, don't let people run over you because you're young. Don't let people despise you because of your youth. But Solomon had been prayed for by his father. And that young man came in and set that house in order. And there was a certain reverence that came about because he meant business. I ain't bothering you. I'm gonna do my job, but please don't hinder my assignment, because I will kill you, said the young man Solomon. Solomon, son of David, strengthened his hold on his kingdom. In other words, he let everybody know, I don't play. Even when old Bathsheba came in there and said, your brother want to marry Abishag. Because I don't believe that. When I read that, you know what? Bathsheba walked up on that girl trying to stay in the room with David, her husband. Now, this just me. I know that David had more than one wife. But Bathsheba was a woman. And when she walked in that bedroom and saw Abishag in there trying to keep David warm, or she was in that area, I don't know if she saw him trying to keep him warm, but she walked in there while she was in there in the room with her husband. Bathsheba didn't say, hey, how you doing? The word didn't record that. That lady walked in there, she saw that girl in there with her husband. She probably did. What you gonna do? We have not changed things. It just was not written. But because what Bathsheba did was when one of David's oldest son wanted to marry that girl. And she walked up to Solomon and said, your brother want to marry Abishag. And then Solomon said to his mama, said, what's up with that? Why don't you just ask for the whole kingdom? Since you brought that in here. He said, Mama, what do you... He killed that boy for sending his mom in that accident. We ain't heard no more from Sister Bathsheba. Solomon was not playing. I really do believe that girl was like, I'm gonna get her to go and marry your brother. He told me to act, because she said, when he came in, she said, come in there, you coming in here peaceably? He said, yeah, just go ask, because he ain't gonna deny you being his mama. Go ask Solomon, can I marry Abishag? And David and Solomon didn't like it. Kill that boy. He said, because the first time you call yourself, establishing yourself to be king, I left you alone. But you ain't going to stop. Get rid of you. And what the word says, Solomon, son of David, strengthened his hold on his kingdom. Now, how do I know all that? Because I read the story that led up to here. That this one story is just keep leading and telling me what happened, because I know what happened. And that's how I know he established his kingdom. The Lord his God was with him and highly exalted him. Went in there and got rid of them folk. He got rid of Joab, the commander-in-chief that gave David a hard time. He got rid of Shimei, and he got rid of his oldest brother. I think it was Adonijah. He said, you got to go. And guess what? God said, that's how you do it. You go into a new place and people in there want to waste time, get rid of them. Give them a chance. But if they still won't do what the word said do, I got to cut you. Well, I've been holding this position for 30 years. He said, well, I'm going to give you a chance to line up with the word. And if you don't line up with the word, I'm going to let you go. I don't care if you are the head usher. You causing too much confusion up in here. That's what the word said. And then God was with him and highly exalted him. Then Solomon spoke to all Israel. Who did he speak to? To the commanders of thousands, the big folk that had 1,000 people in their army, and the ones that had hundreds. He called in the judges. He called in all the leaders in Israel, the family heads. Solomon and the whole assembly with him went to the high place that was in Gibeon, because God's tent of meeting, which the Lord's servant Moses had made in the wilderness, was there. Now, we're talking about from Moses and all the way through the Judges, which was about 400 years. And then the beginning of Saul's reign. And then the life of David, some more years. So you're talking about at least 500 years. And Solomon said David got the Ark of the Covenant in Jerusalem. Now, the Ark of the Covenant was supposed to be where the tabernacle was their portable tent, because the altars were still over there in the high place. So there was a disconnection from the furniture, the Ark of the Covenant being furniture, God's seat where God reigned. And Solomon said, he said, now the ark is in the tent what my daddy built, but the altar is up downtown or on a hill in the high place. I need to go over there. Even though I know the ark is here, we're going to leave it right there. But I'm going over here to the burnt offering, to the altar, and I'm going to go over here and make a sacrifice to God. Now, God's seeing all of this, if I want to say disorder. But God wasn't looking at that. God was looking at the fact that this boy or this young man is about business. He didn't sloppily say, well, I ain't going to do it over there. I'm just going to do it. He didn't do that. He knew what the ark was. He was accountable for the ark. But he knew that burnt offering had space over there in that temple, that tabernacle that God built. Mind you, God gave instruction to this guy exactly how wide to make it, how long to make it, the material to use, every pin that held that thing in the ground, all that stuff had to be perfectly made. 500 years later, that thing was still standing. Still standing. And Solomon went right out there and he brought that, here, we hear the word in. He had all the people with him. And he brought that, here we hear the word in. He had all the people with him. And he went to the high place that was in Gibeon, because God's tent of meeting, which the Lord's servant Moses had made in the wilderness, was there. We still got something that the hand of Moses was on. That God told Moses exactly how I want it done. God spoke to Moses to go down there. He said, I already got the people ready to do it, and they skilled at what they do. Give them my blueprint that I gave you and give it to them, they're going to build it. God didn't tell Moses to build it. He told him to write it. Then he had somebody else that was skilled. That's why God wants us to work together. I may do my part. Then somebody else knows how to take what I'm doing and make it come alive. And God said, I'll speak it. But I got somebody else going to make you be able to make it tangible. You're going to be able to touch it. And he's good at what he does. The guy with the house, the temple, the tent that this guy built for God still lasts. Until Jesus came. We don't need that. You don't need that. That was just getting ready to show you what I'm getting ready to do. Anyway, whatever God spoke and did, it lasts for the purpose in which it lasted. But when he got ready to get rid of it, I don't know if he took it and just wrapped it up and put it up somewhere, or whatever it did, it lasted up until Solomon got there. I know that much. Solomon and the whole assembly with him went to the high place that was in Gibeon, because God's tent of meeting, which the Lord's servant Moses had made in the wilderness, was there. Now David had brought the ark of God from Kiriharim, that's that place I can't pronounce, to the place he had set up for it. So David said, I'm going to get the ark of the covenant, brought it back, and that's where it was in Jerusalem, because he had pitched a tent for it in Jerusalem. So David said, now David is dead. The ark of the covenant is here. But Solomon said, I'm going up there. God knew that Solomon was going to get it together. And this is what happened. All right, he had set it up. David set it up because he had pitched a tent for it in Jerusalem. But he put the bronze altar, which Bezalel, this is the guy that God gave Moses to tell him to make this thing. It's some people so good at what they do. God already, they just waiting on somebody to give them an assignment. They are so good at what they do. God said, this guy is skilled. I want to touch something in life that God can say, take that to printer. Which Bezalel, son of Uriah, son of Hur, had made in front of the Lord's tabernacle. So he took that bronze altar and he brought it outside, and Solomon and the assembly and the assembled inquired of God there. This is where we're going to seek the Lord at. Solomon offered there in the Lord's presence. Solomon offered sacrifices there in the Lord's presence on the bronze altar at the tent of meeting. He offered 1,000 burnt offerings on it. Now, 1,000 burnt offerings. I looked at that thing and I said, that altar still some good. That old, at least about 500 years old. And then Solomon said it's still good enough to make a difference between God and man. He wasn't in there because they had to keep that thing clean. When they used it, they had to clean it. All that blood running down that thing, they had to clean it. And God has said, when you bring anything to the altar, don't ever think that it's too much to bring. Solomon burned 1,000. It didn't say what type of rams or lambs. 1,000. Maybe in 1 King it might have specified what kind, but Chronicles didn't say what kind, but it was 1,000 burnt offerings. That thing had to be in order. When we do things in order, don't you know that it'll last? Anything that we take care of will last. And God has special orders, what to do, what to wipe, who was supposed to touch it. Because God was like this. Don't touch that thing except you be the person that I authorized to touch it. Because if there's a problem, I know directly exactly who to go to. You do what you're assigned to do. So if there's a problem, I'll talk to you about it. Or if something goes wrong, I know you know how to fix it. Why? Because you've been working on that thing. That's what your assignment is. So Solomon took 1,000. God is saying, whether it be a few sins or a whole lot of sins, bring it to the altar and let me burn it up. Don't look at how many sins you got and decide whether or not you can approach me. And Solomon said to God, you have shown great and faithful. This was Solomon said to God. Oh no, I skipped a verse. 1,000 burnt offerings on it. That night, after Solomon did that, that's a lot of work. That's a lot of work. So Solomon came in, setting the house in order. And then Solomon came in saying, I got to burn this, and I know it's going to take some time. That night, God appeared to Solomon and said to him, ask, period. Ask, period. Ask. What should I give you? What you want? And Solomon said to God, you have shown great and faithful love to my daddy, David, Father David, and you have made me king in his place. You did this. You showed a lot of kindness to my daddy. And now you make me king in his place. Lord God, let your promise to my father David now come true. What you told my daddy, let it be done today. For you have made me king over a people as numerous as the dust of the earth. Go outside and pick up a handful of dust. Then measure the earth by billions. And he said, you got me leading all these folks. For you have made me king over people as numerous as the dust of the earth. Solomon wasn't sitting up there looking at, ooh, I know I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. He said, you got me getting ready to lead all these folks. You know I need some sense. Anytime you got anybody in leadership, the first thing that you ought to ask is ask God how to lead these folks. If we go back and look how Moses led them, there's not a whole lot of difference between the children of Israel and us. In fact, I think we're a little bit worse. Or if not, we are exactly as they are or were. But you need wisdom to get. When you go before people, the first thing you ought to know is how do you want me to lead these folks? For you have made me king over people as numerous as the dust of the earth. Now grant me wisdom and knowledge so that I may lead these people. For who can judge this great people of yours? All these folk. I'm young. I ain't tell you how old I am because you already know that. But one thing I know I want to know how in the world do you lead these folk? God said to Solomon, since this was in your heart, he said, I'm reading your heart. You ain't just talking. And you have not requested riches. You could ask me for all the money on earth. You didn't ask me for wealth. So it must be a difference between riches and wealth. I guess we can get the stuff, but wealth means I kept it long enough to accumulate it. I ain't spent it all at one time. You know, riches means I go get it because I want it. Wealth means I still got it. That's me talking though. He said, you didn't ask me for riches. You didn't ask me for wealth or glory, meaning fame, or for life of those who hate you. You could have told me go kill all your enemies, but you didn't ask me that. And you have not even requested long life. You didn't ask me that. You didn't tell me to give you 100 years more to live. You said you didn't ask me that. But you have requested for yourself, for you, wisdom and knowledge, that you may judge. Sorry. That's the guy that cut my yard calling. I ain't got my watch on. I gotta forget. Next time I just have to knock it off. Oh, where was I? You didn't ask me to kill the folk that did you wrong. You didn't even ask me for long life. He said, but you have requested knowledge and wisdom that you may judge my people over whom I have made you king. What was Solomon's position? that he can make a decision between what is right and wrong, and I need that wisdom from God. I will also, he said, wisdom and knowledge are, he said, whom I have made you king. Wisdom and knowledge are given to you. You got it. That's what you want, you got it. However, I will also give you riches. You'll never be broke. Wealth. I wonder if there's any difference between riches and wealth other than what I said. I'm going to give you riches and wealth. Wealth. I got to look those two up because they're so closely related. Riches and wealth. That's something I need to check out. And glory. Unlike what was given to kings who were before you or will be given to those after you. Nobody on earth would be like you. You were the first king. I asked to ask me anything you want. And you asked me for me. You asked for me. I am wisdom. I am knowledge. And I'm going to bring everything else that a man could ask for. Well, with the man would ask for money, I ain't going to see everything because men ask for stuff that Solomon will get himself in trouble in. So Solomon went to Jerusalem. He left there from the high place that was in Gibeon in front of the tent of meeting, and he reigned over Israel. He went home to Jerusalem, and he stayed there because that's where he get ready to fulfill God's will in building that temple, and he built him a house right behind it. You go in the Word, you'll see that. He built that house, and then he built his house right behind it. So when they came in the temple, they saw these two poles that you could see Solomon's house. And he built it in the forest. All that's in the Word. But Chronicles is not telling us all that. So you have to get that more of Solomon, because when you read the life of Solomon, it'll tell you to go to the life of Chronicles. If one didn't have what you need to know, then the other one will. So Chronicles and First King, wherever it talks about Solomon, they are parallel. And I didn't know that because I was too busy dancing and shouting and singing. I didn't learn to read the Word. Since I've been reading the Word, I'm learning how to read the Word and how it's set up. I had to sit down somewhere and say, what did this Word really say? Verse 14, Solomon accumulated. Now Solomon is good and established, and everybody knows him. Now we're getting ready to deal with Solomon as he's, get a little bit further into what he's doing. Over time, Solomon accumulated 1,400 chariots and 12,000 horsemen. He had 1,400 chariots. In other words, he had 1,400 cars, and he had 1,200 men to ride in those cars. Just letting you see what it said. Which he stationed in the chariot cities with the king in Jerusalem. In other words, Solomon had so much until he needed Atlanta, you hold the chariots. He needed Memphis, just give you an idea, you hold the horses. He had cities like a garage. Go back in there and check it back in Kings. He was just that rich. He had a whole city of nothing but horses. He had a whole city with nothing but chariots. The king made silver and gold as common in Jerusalem as stones. Like we go outside and pick up a rock. Solomon was just that rich. What is money to a man that God said, I'll make you rich? What is that? What is that? And then Solomon going to end up telling us how he spent that money and what he did, all that money. And then once you learn these kings, once I saw what they did to all this is just the beginning of it. I don't like to tell the movie before we get to it. I've already read this in the King, First and Second Kings. As much money as God gave Solomon, them kings after Solomon stole that stuff, broke that stuff. God is like, I give you all the stuff you want, but if you don't give me you just asking for nothing. All right, the kings made silver gold as common in Jerusalem as stones, and he made cedar abundant as sycamore in the Judean foothill. Solomon had stuff. Solomon horses came from Egypt. Put an X right there. This is getting ready to be the downfall of Solomon. What did God tell Moses? 500 years later, he said, go back and check what did I tell Moses. Even though Moses is dead, but what I told Moses, God said, I ain't opened my mouth since then. I'm just like a principal walking down the hall. I gave you the book. Now I'm just going to see if you're going to follow my instructions. 500 years later, give or take, Solomon went to Egypt. And God told Moses, tell anybody that's going to be king, don't you go back to Egypt and buy nothing. Don't go back to sin and get something. Don't go back to bondage. Don't go back and think you got to get something from them. Chronicle does not give us every detail. It just gives us enough to know that this is what happened in the order that it happened. Solomon horses came from, so you read Chronicles like this. And she was hired. Then she was fired. But then you got to go somewhere else and find out why was she hired and then why was she fired. That's not in the same chronological order. Chronicles is just giving us what happened, the truth of what happened. But if you want to know more details, you got to go back into Kings to get the fatty part of it. Solomon horses came from Egypt and Ku, a place called Kue. The king's traders, Solomon had people that, went down there like Wall Street. The king's traders would get them from Ku at the going price. In other words, you get a good sale going over there in Ku, Kue. A chariot could be imported from Egypt for 15 pounds of silver and a horse for nearly 4 pounds. So the chariots cost a lot more than the horses. And I listened to this guy. I said, these were not your horses that you go doing stuff around the yard or going on ferry or wheels or just regular horses. These were war horses, horses that were trained to go to battle. He said a chariot cost 15 pounds of silver and a horse for nearly 4 pounds, so it's a lot cheaper. The horse was a lot cheaper than the chariot. He said in the same way they exported. Exported means they sold them to all the kings of the Hittites and to the kings of Aram through their agents. So Solomon had people that was hired to ask the other kings that normally they would be at war with, and you wouldn't buy a horse. And God told them, don't get off into that. So now we're seeing the beginning of what Solomon is doing through Chronicles to show that anytime we start doing little old bitty stuff that look like it ought to be all right to do, but you go back and check what Moses said to see if God said, is it legal to do it? Because that's what a law is. We take God's law and we say, we ain't under the law no more. You understand? When we say that, I really don't know what you mean. The same laws that God said don't break, that the police will arrest you for, are the same laws that God told Moses to tell these folks to write them down. These are laws that you got to obey. We say that, but then we go right out there and break all them laws as if to say, I ain't under the law no more. You are under the law. Lying is still wrong. Stealing is still wrong. Killing is still wrong. What law you ain't on? Let me know. Which one you not under? Now, you don't pay the same penalty. Jesus paid the penalty for the laws that were broken, that we ought not to be breaking. He's got the truth be told. It's a law against looking at somebody and wanting to do something to them. Jesus said, now I'm going to go pay the penalty because every sin, the equivalency of breaking the law is death. Jesus, I'm going to go and die for the sins so you don't have to commit them. However, if you do, you're under the same penalty. So don't treat my death as if it didn't mean anything. It meant that I paid for sin so you don't have to pay for it. So Solomon right here, at first, because it's going to take us really fast, Solomon is going before God praying. The Lord heard him. The Lord granted. Solomon got the stuff that God said. Then Solomon accumulated all that wealth. And then he starts slipping. See, the first time we catch ourselves slipping, it's like cleaning up a house. If you see some paper on the floor, don't just leave it there. Go pick it up, put it in the garbage, make it easy on yourself. Because just as sure as you leave that down, then something else, after a while, you're going to be living in something. You're going to say, oh, God, I'm too tired to clean this up. So pick it up when you see it out of order. Just put it back in order. I'm talking, y'all, because I'm telling the truth about myself. But that is chapter 2. That's chapter 1 of 2 Chronicles, chapter 1. And I'm getting ready to walk through, if the Lord allows me to live, every book slowly so I can know how to behave myself. We can learn from Solomon. Learn from Solomon that we don't have to, if God asks, God said, he said, Solomon asked for what y'all already got. You got a copy of wisdom. You got a copy of knowledge. And if you do the knowledge of what I said, then the wisdom of what you would get out of it will come along with it. They said, knowledge, wisdom is applied knowledge. That's what somebody said. So I know what to do. So everything that Solomon had, everything that I need is, Jesus said, it's a greater than Solomon here. Because Solomon was able to go out there and tell you that's an ant. And he'll tell you what kind of ant it was and where he lived. Solomon knew everything about everything. He knew everything about trees, everything about ants. I got an encyclopedia. I got Google for that. Solomon got all that. Solomon knew all that stuff Google got. So we got a copy of Solomon's mind through Google. But what Jesus said, I got something greater than Solomon. I got the key to show you how to live with my Father forever. Anyway, Solomon wasn't here to tell you how to live on earth. Jesus said, I'm trying to tell you how to live here on earth and in the world to come. I'm done, y'all. This second Chronicles, chapter 1. All right, Rita, help me with this word, girl. Help me with this word. Love y'all. Bye.